The phone call came at exactly 6:47 p.m. Alexander Sterling had just cleared customs at JFK, his Armani suit wrinkled from the 14-hour flight from Singapore, when his private line buzzed. The number displayed on the screen was one he did not recognize. Something cold settled in his chest even before he answered. "Mr. Sterling, this is Officer Davis with the NYPD." The voice was professional but edged with something that made Alexander's heart skip. "We have a situation involving your son." The world narrowed to a pinpoint. "What about Noah? Where is he?" Rain hammered against the terminal windows. October in New York, brutal and unforgiving. Alexander was already running, security details scrambling to keep pace. He was found at Riverside Park about 20 minutes ago. He's being transported to Presbyterian Hospital for evaluation. "Sir, I need you to—" The line went dead. Alexander did not remember the drive, only flashes. Rain streaking across bulletproof glass. Marcus Reeves, his head of security, barking orders into his phone. The city lights blurring past like tracer rounds. His hands gripping the leather seat until his knuckles went white. 3 years old. Blind. Missing for how long? The guilt came in waves, each one threatening to pull him under. He had been in Singapore closing a deal worth $300 million, while his son was somewhere in the rain. Alone, terrified, unable to see. The hospital emergency entrance glowed like a beacon through the downpour. Alexander was out of the car before it stopped moving, security scrambling behind him. Nurses looked up, startled, as the CEO of Sterling Enterprises stormed through their doors. "Noah Sterling, where is my son?" A young resident pointed toward Trauma Bay 3. Alexander shouldered past her, Marcus at his heels, and what he saw next would burn itself into his memory forever. Noah lay on a gurney, so small he barely made an impression on the white sheets. Mud caked his blonde hair. Blood from a cut on his forehead had dried in rust-colored streaks down his face. His little hands were scraped raw. But what stopped Alexander cold was the girl. She could not have been more than 8 years old. Asian features, black hair in a messy ponytail, her clothes as mud-soaked as Noah's. She sat on the edge of the gurney, holding Noah's hand, speaking to him in a voice so gentle it cracked something in Alexander's chest. "The doctors are nice, Noah, I promise. They just want to make sure you're okay." Noah's clouded eyes turned toward her voice. His small fingers tightened around hers. "Don't leave, Lily. Please don't leave." Alexander approached slowly, like one might approach a wounded animal. Noah's head turned at the sound of his footsteps, that eerie precision blind children develop. "Daddy?" The word was small, uncertain, as if Noah was not quite sure his father would actually be there. Alexander knelt beside the gurney, his $2,000 suit absorbing muddy water from the floor. He took Noah's other hand, the one not being held by the girl called Lily. "I'm here, buddy. I'm here." Noah's lower lip trembled. Then he was crying, silent tears tracking through the dirt on his face. Alexander pulled him close, feeling his son's tiny frame shaking. And for the first time in 3 years since Elena's funeral, Alexander Sterling allowed himself to break. "You came," Noah whispered into his father's shoulder. "You actually came." The knife twisted deeper. Marcus cleared his throat from the doorway. When Alexander looked up, his head of security gestured toward the hallway. Reluctantly, Alexander extracted himself from Noah's grip, but Lily immediately filled the space, her small hand finding Noah's again. "I'll be right back," Alexander promised. In the hallway, Marcus spoke in low tones. His expression was the controlled neutral he wore when delivering bad news. The nanny lost him at Columbus Circle. She took him shopping instead of to his therapy appointment. Got distracted at Bergdorf's. When she turned around, he was gone. Alexander's vision went red at the edges. "Where is she?" "I fired her 30 minutes ago. Had building security remove her belongings from the apartment." "How long was he missing?" Marcus hesitated. That pause told Alexander everything he needed to know. 2 hours, maybe closer to 3. 3 hours. A blind 3-year-old alone in New York City for 3 hours. "The girl?" Alexander forced himself to focus on what mattered. "Who is she?" "Lily Chen, age 8. She found Noah in a construction pit at the north end of Riverside Park. Apparently jumped in after him without hesitation." Marcus pulled up something on his phone. Surveillance footage from a nearby traffic camera caught the end of it. He showed Alexander the grainy footage, a small figure in a pink jacket climbing down into a muddy excavation site, emerging minutes later with an even smaller figure clutched in her arms. "Where are her parents?" "Single mother, Sarah Chen. She's on her way. Works 2 jobs, waitress and call center. Got off shift 20 minutes ago." Alexander studied the footage again. The girl had not hesitated, had not called for help first or waited for an adult. She had simply jumped into the mud and pulled his son to safety. "I want to meet her mother." A commotion at the emergency entrance announced Sarah Chen's arrival. Alexander recognized her immediately from the panic in her eyes, the Denny's uniform she still wore, the way she scanned the room like a soldier clearing hostile territory. She found Lillian. The relief that flooded her face was so profound it was almost painful to witness. She rushed to the gurney, hands running over her daughter, checking for injuries. "Baby, what happened? Are you hurt?" Lily looked up at her mother, and Alexander saw something in that young face that made his throat tight. Pride, fierce and unshakable. "I saved him, Mom. He was crying and I couldn't just leave him there." Sarah pulled her daughter close, and Alexander saw her eyes travel over Lily's ruined clothes, the expensive sneakers now caked in mud and beyond saving. Something flickered across her face. Not anger, but a resignation that spoke of too many months choosing between rent and new shoes. Alexander approached carefully. Sarah looked up, defensive walls already rising. "Mrs. Chen?" "It's Ms. Chen." Her chin lifted slightly. "And if my daughter did something wrong, I apologize. She knows better than to—" "Your daughter saved my son's life." The words hung in the air between them. Sarah blinked, confusion replacing defensiveness. Alexander's voice, when he continued, was rough with emotion he could not quite control. "Noah was lost, alone. She found him when no one else did. She pulled him out of that pit and stayed with him until help arrived." He paused, forcing himself to meet her eyes. "I owe you a debt I can never repay." Sarah's expression softened, but wariness remained. She had the look of someone who had learned the hard way that good fortune always came with strings attached. "You don't owe us anything, mister." Sterling, Alexander Sterling." Recognition flickered, then something else. She knew who he was. Everyone in New York knew who Alexander Sterling was. Forbes had recently ranked him as the 43rd richest man in America. "Well, Mr. Sterling," Sarah's voice was careful now, measured. "Lily did what any decent person would do. We should be going. I'm sure you want time with your son." She started to gather Lily, but Noah's hand shot out, finding Lily's wrist with that uncanny accuracy. "Please don't go. Not yet." Alexander made a decision, the kind of split-second judgment call that had built his empire, trusting instinct over analysis. "Mrs. Chen, would you and your daughter join me in my office? I'd like to discuss something with you." After the doctors clear Noah. Suspicion returned to Sarah's eyes. "Discuss what?" "An opportunity, one I think would benefit both our families." 2 hours later, Sarah Chen stood in Alexander Sterling's office on the 68th floor of Sterling Tower and tried not to let her jaw drop. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Manhattan that belonged on postcards. The furniture probably cost more than she made in a year. Original art on the walls. A private bar that looked like something from a five-star hotel. Lily pressed her nose against the glass, staring down at the city lights below. Noah sat on a leather couch, freshly bathed and in clean clothes, his small hands exploring a Braille book Alexander's assistant had somehow procured in the last hour. Alexander stood behind his desk, still in his ruined suit. He had not changed, had not left Noah's side except for the 5 minutes it took to instruct his staff to arrange this meeting. Sarah noted this, noted too the photo on his desk, a beautiful woman with kind eyes holding a baby. The woman's smile was genuine, the kind that reached the eyes, Alexander's wife Sarah assumed, or had been. "Ms. Chen, I'll be direct." Alexander's voice pulled her attention back. "What do you do for work?" Sarah's defenses went up. "I work 2 jobs, waitressing at Denny's and overnight shifts at a call center." "Why?" "Single mother?" Her jaw tightened. "My husband died 4 years ago. Construction accident. I raised Lily on my own." Alexander nodded, filing the information away. His expression gave nothing away, but Sarah saw his eyes flick to Lily, then to Noah. Calculating something. "I'd like to offer you a position. Family liaison for Noah. Competitive salary, full benefits, and an apartment in this building." Sarah laughed. She could not help it. The sound came out bitter, disbelieving. "You don't know anything about me. You want to give me a ball and an apartment based on what? 5 minutes of conversation?" "No." Alexander moved around the desk, and Sarah was struck by how tired he looked. How old, despite being probably only in his late 30s. "I want to give you a job based on watching your daughter jump into a muddy pit without hesitation to save a child she'd never met. Based on the fact that my son has smiled more in the last 2 hours than he has in the last 6 months. Based on character, Ms. Chen. The kind you can't fake." He paused, and when he spoke again, His voice was quieter. Rover. Noah's mother died 2 years ago. Cancer. I've hired 7 nannies since then, all highly qualified. All came with impeccable references. All failed because Noah wouldn't connect with them. He looked at his son, and the pain in his eyes was naked. He's been withdrawing more each day, eating less, speaking less. I've been terrified I was losing him piece by piece. Alexander turned back to Sarah. In 2 hours, your daughter got him to laugh, to engage, to trust. I don't know how she did it, but I need that for my son. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering you a job because I'm desperate and you have something I need. Sarah studied him. This was not the ruthless CEO she'd read about in Forbes. This was a father drowning and reaching for a lifeline. What exactly would this job entail? Coordinating Noah's care, his therapy appointments, medical needs, daily routines. Being present when I can't be. His voice hardened slightly, which is more often than I'd like. I don't have any formal training in childcare. Neither did I, and I'm his father. A ghost of a smile. You'd have support, medical staff, therapists. Marcus handles security. But Noah needs someone who sees him as a child first, not the sterling heir, someone he trusts. Sarah looked at Lily and Noah on the couch. Lily was showing Noah how to feel the raised dots of Braille, her small fingers guiding his. Noah was giggling at something she said. Why do I feel like there's more to this? Alexander followed her gaze. Because there is. Westfield Academy, where Noah attends, has an excellent program for children with special needs. They also happen to have one of the best academic programs in the city. If you were to accept this position, I'd like to offer Lily a full scholarship. There it was, the catch. Sarah felt heat rising in her face. I can't accept that. It's too much. It's not charity, it's logistics. Noah does better when Lily's around. If they're at the same school, Lily can help him navigate. She'd be doing me a favor. Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to walk out with her pride intact, but she thought about Lily's future, about the opportunities a school like Westfield could provide, about not having to work 2 jobs anymore, about being able to actually see her daughter grow up instead of just catching glimpses between shifts. I need to think about it. Of course. Alexander handed her a card, his private number, she realized, not an assistance line. Take all the time you need, but Ms. Chen? He waited until she met his eyes. I meant what I said. You saved my son's life tonight. However you answer, I'm in your debt. Sarah took the card. As she gathered Lily to leave, Noah's small voice stopped them at the door. Will Lily come back tomorrow? Sarah looked at Alexander. He looked back at her, and in his eyes she saw the same thing she saw in the mirror every morning. Fear, desperation, the bone-deep terror of failing the small person depending on you. Yes, Sarah heard herself say, Lily will come back tomorrow. Noah's smile was blinding. 1 week later, Sarah stood in the middle of her new apartment and wondered if she had made a deal with the devil or been handed a miracle. 3 bedrooms, marble countertops, a bathroom bigger than her old kitchen, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. It did not feel real. None of it felt real. Lily spun in circles in her new bedroom, arms outstretched, laughing. Mom, I can see the whole city. There's the park. And look, you can see the museum. Sarah leaned against the doorframe, watching her daughter, and felt tears threatening. 4 years. 4 years of choosing between electricity and groceries. Of telling Lily they could not afford dance classes or new books. Of working herself to exhaustion and still falling short. And now this. Her phone buzzed. A text from Alexander checking if they needed anything. He had been doing that, small messages throughout the week, making sure the apartment was satisfactory. That they had everything they needed. Always professional, but with an undercurrent of something else. Gratitude, maybe. Or desperation. Sarah texted back that they were fine, thank you. The truth was more complicated. She did not trust this. Did not trust that it would last. Men like Alexander Sterling did not just hand over apartments and jobs and scholarships without expecting something in return. The other shoe would drop eventually. It always did. But for now, for Lily's sake, she would play along. The next morning, Sarah walked Lily and Noah to Westfield Academy. The school was everything she had expected. Brick and ivy, uniformed students, parents in designer clothes dropping off children in cars that cost more than houses. The other mother stared as Sarah approached. She felt their eyes cataloging her Target blazer, her sensible flats, the way she did not quite belong. One woman, blonde and perfectly coiffed, leaned to whisper to her friend. Sarah caught only fragments. The charity case. Heard Sterling hired her. Jumped into mud. Can you imagine? Sarah's face burned, but she kept her spine straight. Lily, oblivious, held Noah's hand and described everything they passed. There's a big oak tree to your left, Noah, and the building is red brick with white windows. Oh, and there are flowers. Pink ones. Noah listened with rapt attention, his face turned toward her, voice like a flower-seeking sun. A teacher approached, kind-faced and professional. You must be Lily Chen. I'm Mrs. Patterson, Noah's homeroom teacher. She smiled at Sarah. Mr. Sterling called ahead. I understand Lily will be helping Noah navigate the school? If that's okay, Sarah said carefully. More than okay. We encourage peer support in our special needs program. Mrs. Patterson knelt to Lily's level. Lily, would you like to be Noah's classroom buddy? You'd help him get from class to class, make sure he has his materials, things like that. Lily's face lit up. Really? I can do that. Wonderful. Noah, what do you think? Noah's grip on Lily's hand tightened. Yes, please. As Sarah watched them disappear into the school hand in hand, something in her chest loosened. Maybe this could work. Maybe for once, the universe was throwing her a break instead of a curveball. She was wrong. That evening, Marcus found Alexander in his home office, drowning in quarterly reports he could not focus on. His head of security's expression was grim. We have a problem. Alexander looked up. Define problem. Gerald Blackwood called an emergency board meeting. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Gerald, board member old guard and perpetual thorn in Alexander's side. The man had been angling for more control of Sterling Enterprises since Alexander's father died. What's the agenda? Marcus's jaw tightened. You, specifically, your, quote, compromised judgment, end quote. Alexander's hands stilled on the papers. Elaborate. They're questioning the Chen hire, calling it reckless, suggesting you're not thinking clearly. I hired a family liaison. Hardly grounds for a board meeting. They're saying it's a pattern, that you've been making emotional decisions since Noah's kidnapping scare. Marcus paused. They're not entirely wrong, sir. Alexander stood slowly, something dangerous flickering in his eyes. Noah wasn't kidnapped. He was lost because the nanny I hired was incompetent. I know that, but the board sees a CEO who flew home from Singapore in the middle of critical negotiations, who hired someone with no background check based on a single incident, who's giving premium housing and private school scholarships to complete strangers. I did background checks, Sarah. Marcus looked uncomfortable. Sir, there's something you should know, something the board will definitely bring up. He pulled out a file. Alexander took it, scanning the contents, and felt his blood run cold. Thomas Chen, embezzlement conviction, currently serving 15 years at Attica, Sarah's father. Does she know? Alexander's voice was carefully controlled. No, sir. Her mother told her he died when she was 12. Changed their names from Coleman to Chen, moved across the state. Sarah grew up believing her father was dead. Alexander looked at the mugshot of Thomas Chen. The resemblance to Sarah was there in the eyes, the shape of the jaw. You said the board knows us about this. Gerald had her investigated the day after you hired her. He's been sitting on this, waiting for the right moment. Marcus's expression was grim. The meeting tomorrow is him making his move. He'll paint Sarah as a potential security risk, suggest she might be here for revenge, or to steal corporate secrets, or any number of scenarios that sound paranoid but will make the board nervous. Alexander sat down heavily. He had known this was coming. The board had been restless since Elena died, questioning his focus, suggesting he step down temporarily. The Chen hire would give them ammunition. What do you recommend? Distance yourself from the Chens, move them to different housing, reassign Sarah to a less visible position, show the board you're being cautious. And Noah? Marcus was quiet. Exactly. Alexander stood again, pacing to the windows. Below, the city glittered like a promise, or a threat. Noah is finally responding to someone, finally eating properly, sleeping through the night, engaging with his therapists. I'm supposed to take that away from him because the board is nervous? Sir, with respect, you need to think strategically. If they force a vote of no confidence, then I'll fight it. Alexander's voice was steel. I control 48% of this company. My mother controls another 12. They'd need a 2/3 majority to remove me. Gerald's been talking to the other board members, building coalition. Sir, he might have the votes. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Alexander's phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. Lily wanted me to send this. An attached photo showed Lily and Noah at the apartment, building something with blocks. Noah was laughing, his whole face alight with joy. Alexander showed Marcus the photo. Tell me how I'm supposed to take this away from him. Marcus had no answer. The emergency board meeting convened at exactly 9 a.m. in the Sterling Tower conference room. 14 board members, all in expensive suits, all wearing expressions ranging from concern to barely concealed hostility. Alexander took his seat at the head of the table. Victoria, his mother, sat to his right. She had flown in from Paris the night before, her usual impeccable appearance marred only by jet lag. Gerald Blackwood cleared his throat. 61 years old, silver-haired, the kind of man who wore his wealth like armor. Thank you all for coming on short notice. I'll get straight to the point. We need to discuss Alexander's recent decisions regarding the Chen family. Diana Pierce, another board member, leaned forward. She was younger than most of the others, ruthless and ambitious. Alexander had never trusted her. We've all read Marcus's security briefing. Sarah Chen's father is a convicted felon. She's been living under an assumed name, and Alexander gave her access to his home, his son, and sensitive corporate information without proper vetting. I did vet her, Alexander said calmly. Marcus ran a complete background check. After you'd already hired her, Gerald countered, and only because Marcus insisted. You made an emotional decision, Alexander. We understand you were grateful. Noah was safe. You wanted to reward the girl, but this isn't how we run a Fortune 50 company. Victoria spoke up, her voice cool and controlled. Are we seriously suggesting Alexander should have ignored the woman who saved his grandson? That gratitude is now a liability. We're suggesting caution, Diana said. TriStar Industries, the company Thomas Chen embezzled from, we acquired them 3 years ago. Their executives now work for us. What if Sarah is here seeking revenge, information, access? Alexander felt his temper rising but kept his voice level. You're suggesting an 8-year-old orchestrated jumping into a mud pit to save my son as part of some elaborate revenge scheme? We're suggesting, Gerald said carefully, that we don't know Sarah Chen's true motivations. And until we do, she shouldn't have the level of access you've granted her. The other board members murmured agreement. Alexander saw the coalition Marcus had warned about. Gerald had done his homework. What exactly are you proposing? Reassignment, Diana said. Move Ms. Chen to a position with less access, perhaps in one of our satellite offices. Provide her with a generous severance package for her service, and definitely rescind the housing and the scholarship. Alexander's hands clenched under the table. Noah is finally stable, finally improving. You want me to rip away the one person he's connected with since his mother died? We want you to put the company first, Gerald said, as you always have, as your father did. The invocation of his father was a low blow. Everyone in the room knew it. Victoria placed a hand on Alexander's arm, a warning, but he was past warnings. My father also built this company on the principle of loyalty, of rewarding those who show character and courage. Sarah Chen showed both. I won't punish her because her father made mistakes she knew nothing about. Then you're choosing her over the company, Diana said quietly. I'm choosing my son. The room went silent. Gerald leaned back, and Alexander saw the trap snap shut. This was what Gerald had wanted. Alexander on record choosing family over business. The board would use this, would twist it into evidence of compromised judgment. We'll call for a vote, Gerald said. All in favor of requiring Alexander to reassign Sarah Chen and reduce his personal involvement in day-to-day operations pending a full review of his decision-making. Hands rose. Alexander counted them. 8, more than half. Victoria's hand stayed down. 2 other board members, old friends of his father, also abstained. But the math was clear. Gerald had won. The motion passes. Alexander, you have 2 weeks to make the transition. I suggest you use them to find Ms. Chen appropriate placement somewhere that won't put the company at risk. Alexander stood slowly. Every eye in the room watched him. He thought about Noah's smile in that photo, about Lily's hand in his son's, about the promise he had made to Sarah that this opportunity was real. This meeting is adjourned. He walked out before anyone could respond. Marcus caught up with him in the hallway. Sir, I'm sorry. If I'd known, it's not your fault. Alexander's voice was hollow. Call Sarah. Ask her to come to my office. I need to tell her before the board leaks it to the press. Sarah arrived 30 minutes later, still in the blazer she wore for Noah's morning therapy session. She knew something was wrong the moment she saw Alexander's face. What happened? Alexander gestured to a chair. She did not sit. The board held an emergency meeting this morning. About you. About me? They ran a background check. Sarah, did you know your father is alive? The color drained from her face. For a moment, Alexander thought she might collapse. She reached for the chair back, steadying herself. What? Alexander pulled out the file, handed it to her with something close to pity. Thomas Chen, 15-year sentence for embezzlement. He's currently incarcerated at Attica. Sarah's hands shook as she opened the file. Alexander watched her read, saw the moment understanding, crash through denial. Her face crumpled. My mother told me he died. Car accident. I was 12. She lied to protect you, changed your names, moved you away from the scandal. Alexander's voice gentled. Sarah, I believe you didn't know. But the board doesn't. They see a security risk. Sarah looked up at him, and the betrayal in her eyes cut deep. You're firing me. No, they want me to reassign you, move you to a different position, different housing. They want distance between you and Noah. Because of my father, because of crimes I didn't commit, didn't even know about. Because they think I'm compromised, making emotional decisions. Alexander ran a hand through his hair. They're not entirely wrong. Sarah closed the file carefully. When she spoke, her voice was steady but cold. How long do I have? 2 weeks. But Sarah, I'm going to fight this. I'll find a way. Don't. She stood, spine straight, despite the tears tracking down her face. Don't make promises you can't keep. I've heard them before. Sarah, I'll pack our things tonight. Lily and I will be out by morning. You don't have to leave immediately. Take the 2 weeks. Let me figure out, Mr. Sterling. The formality of his title was a wall between them. I appreciate what you tried to do for Lily and me, but I'm not going to wait around for your board to make my daughter feel like charity. We're better off on our own. She walked to the door, then paused without turning around. Tell Noah I'm sorry. He's a wonderful boy. He deserves better than all of us. Then she was gone. Alexander stood alone in his office and allowed himself 60 seconds to feel the crushing weight of failure. Then he picked up his phone. Marcus, I need you to compile everything we have on Gerald Blackwood. Financial records, communications, everything. If he's targeting Sarah to get to me, I want to know why. Sir, if the board finds out you're investigating, I don't care. Do it. Alexander hung up and looked at the photo on his desk. Elena, smiling, cradling newborn Noah. She had always known when he was making a mistake. Would have told him, gently but firmly, when he was letting fear guide him instead of courage. He had let fear win today. Fear of the board, of losing control, of his father's legacy crumbling. And in doing so, he had lost something more important. His phone buzzed, a text from the apartment building's concierge. Ms. Chen and her daughter are moving out. Should I assist? Alexander closed his eyes. That evening, Noah refused dinner, refused his bath, refused everything until Alexander finally carried him, struggling and crying, to his room. Where's Lily? Why isn't Lily here? Alexander sat on the edge of Noah's bed, his son's small body rigid with distress. Lily had to go home, buddy. But she lives here, in the building. You promised she'd be here. How did you explain adult failures to a 3-year-old? How did you tell your son that you had chosen a boardroom over his happiness? I'm sorry, Noah. Things changed. Noah turned his face away. You're always sorry, but you're never here. The words landed like physical blows. That's not fair, Noah. Mommy was always here. Then she died. Lily was here. Now she's gone too. Noah's voice cracked. Everyone leaves except you, and you're never really here anyway. Alexander reached for his son, but Noah pulled away. I want to be alone. Noah, please go away, Daddy. Alexander stood, legs unsteady, and walked to the door. He looked back once. Noah had curled into a ball, his small frame shaking with silent sobs. In the hallway, Marcus waited. Sir, I've found something on Gerald. Not now. Sir, you need to see this. Alexander followed Marcus to the study. His head of security pulled up financial records on the computer. Gerald's been embezzling from Sterling Enterprises for the last 3 years. Small amounts, routed through shell companies. I almost missed it. Alexander leaned closer, exhaustion making the numbers blur. How much? 4.2 million so far. The same amount Thomas Chen had been convicted of stealing. Something clicked into place. The TriStar acquisition. My father pushed it through 3 months before he died. Gerald opposed it. Said the company was worthless, that we were overpaying. Because he knew about the embezzlement, Marcus finished. If we acquired TriStar, we'd acquire their debt, their legal issues, everything, including the investigation that eventually caught Thomas Chen. But Thomas wasn't the embezzler. Alexander's mind raced. Gerald was. He framed Thomas to cover his own tracks, and when we acquired TriStar anyway, he's been scrambling to keep it hidden. Marcus pulled up more files. Thomas Chen was TriStar's forensic accountant. He found discrepancies in their books and reported them. 2 weeks later, 4 million disappeared and Thomas was arrested. The evidence against him was circumstantial, but damning. Gerald needed us to stay away from TraStar. When we acquired them anyway, he needed to bury the evidence. And when Sarah showed up, he saw a threat. If she dug into her father's case, she might uncover what really happened. Alexander stood. The pieces were falling into place, but they added up to something ugly. Can you prove Gerald framed Thomas? Not yet, but Thomas might be able to help. If he kept records, documentation, anything from his original investigation, set up a meeting with Thomas, with Sarah if she'll come. We need to know what really happened. Alexander looked out the window at the city below. Somewhere out there, Sarah was packing up the life he had given her and then taken away. Noah was crying himself to sleep, and Gerald Blackwood was sleeping soundly, secure in his victory. Not for long. Alexander pulled out his phone and called Victoria. Mother, I need you to call an emergency shareholder meeting. I'm going to war with the board. Victoria's voice came back crisp and alert despite the late hour. About time. I was wondering when you'd stop playing defense. This isn't about defense anymore. Gerald's been stealing from the company. He framed an innocent man, and he went after Sarah because she's a threat to his secrets. Can you prove it? Not yet, but I will. And when I do, I'm not just removing him from the board. I'm putting him in prison. Good, Victoria's voice held grim satisfaction. Your father would have done the same. Sometimes you have to be ruthless to protect what matters. Alexander looked at the photo of Elena one more time. I'm done being careful, Mother. I'm done letting fear make my decisions. Noah deserves better. Sarah deserves better. And I'm going to make this right, whatever it takes. He hung up and pulled out his laptop, started typing an email to Sarah, deleted it, started again. How did you apologize for not fighting hard enough? For letting someone down who had asked for nothing but a chance? In the end, he kept it simple. I'm sorry, I should have fought harder. Give me 2 weeks to fix this, please. He hit send before he could second guess it. Then Alexander Sterling, CEO of a $50 billion empire, sat alone in his office and waited for morning when the real war would begin. Sarah did not respond to the email. 2 weeks passed. Alexander spent them building his case against Gerald, piece by meticulous piece. Marcus worked 18-hour days pulling financial records, tracking shell companies, building a web of evidence that connected Gerald to the embezzlement that had destroyed Thomas Chen's life. But the investigation was cold comfort when Alexander came home each night to find Noah getting worse. The decline was not dramatic. That would have been easier to fight. Instead, it was incremental, a steady erosion that terrified Alexander more than any sudden crisis. Noah stopped eating breakfast, picked at lunch, pushed away dinner. Not hungry, Daddy. He stopped asking about Lily after the first week. That scared Alexander most of all. The silence where questions used to be. The therapist noticed. Dr. Williams called it clinical depression, wanted to start Noah on medication. Alexander refused, knowing pills could not fix what he had broken. At night, Alexander stood outside Noah's door and listened to his son cry himself to sleep. Small, hitching sobs that Noah tried to muffle in his pillow, 3 years old and already learning to hide his pain. Alexander wanted to go in, wanted to hold Noah and promise everything would be okay, but the promises felt hollow. He had promised Noah that Lily would stay. That promise had lasted exactly 2 weeks. On the 10th day, Marcus found Alexander in his office at 2 in the morning, staring at spreadsheets he was not actually reading. Sir, you need to sleep. I need to finish this. Alexander's voice was rough from too much coffee and not enough rest. The shareholder meeting is in 4 days. If we don't have everything, we have enough. Gerald's buried under evidence. The board will have no choice but to remove him. And Sarah? Noah? Alexander looked up. How does winning against Gerald fix what I've done? Marcus had no answer. Alexander's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Tell Noah I'm sorry I had to go. Tell him it wasn't his fault. Tell him Lily misses him too. Sarah, finally responding, but not to him, to Noah. Alexander showed Marcus the message. How do I answer this? Honestly, sir, tell her you're fighting to fix this. Ask her to wait. Alexander typed out a response. Deleted it, tried again. I'm removing Gerald from the board in 4 days. I have evidence he framed your father. Please don't give up on us yet. Noah needs you. I need you. He stared at the last 3 words for a long moment before hitting send. This time, Sarah responded immediately. My father? What are you talking about? Alexander called her. She answered on the second ring. Alexander? Hearing her say his first name instead of Mr. Sterling made something in his chest loosen. Thomas Chen wasn't an embezzler. He was a whistleblower. Gerald Blackwood framed him to cover his own theft. Silence on the line. Then Sarah's voice, very small. How do you know? Marcus found the evidence. Paper trails, shell companies, everything. Thomas found the discrepancies in TriStar's books and reported them. 2 weeks later, money disappeared and Thomas was arrested. The evidence against him was fabricated. My father has been in prison for 15 years for a crime he didn't commit. It was not a question. The flatness in Sarah's voice scared Alexander more than tears would have. I'm going to fix this. I'm meeting with Thomas tomorrow. Will you come? Another long pause. Where? Attica Correctional Facility sat 3 hours north of the city, a sprawling complex of concrete and razor wire that made Alexander's skin crawl. He had made the drive in silence, Sarah in the passenger seat, both of them lost in their own thoughts. Marcus had arranged the visit through channels Alexander did not ask about. Some things were better left unquestioned. They were led through security, through corridors that echoed with distant sounds Alexander did not want to identify, to a private meeting room, not the usual visitor area. Marcus had called in favors. Thomas Chen was brought in wearing orange prison scrubs, his hands cuffed. He was 62 but looked older, his hair completely gray, his frame thin from institutional food and stress. When he saw Sarah, he stopped walking. Sarah. Sarah stood frozen. This man was a stranger. The father she remembered had been robust, laughing, teaching her to ride a bike. This man was a ghost wearing her father's face. Dad? The guard uncuffed Thomas and left them alone. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Sarah crossed the space between them and embraced her father for the first time in 15 years. Thomas Chen broke down, great, shaking sobs that he tried to muffle against Sarah's shoulder. She held him, tears streaming down her own face, and Alexander felt like an intruder witnessing something too private for outside eyes. Finally, Thomas pulled back. You're so grown up. You look just like your mother. His voice was hoarse. How is she? Is Ellen okay? Sarah's face crumpled. Mom died 6 years ago, heart attack. Thomas sat down heavily. I didn't know. They wouldn't tell me. I wrote letters, but they came back. I thought she didn't want contact. She told me you were dead. Car accident. Changed our names, moved us across the state. Sarah sat beside him. I just found out the truth 2 weeks ago. She was protecting you. I made her promise to cut all ties. The trial was ugly. I didn't want you associated with that. Alexander stepped forward. Mr. Chen, my name is Alexander Sterling. I need to ask you about TriStar Industries. Thomas looked at him warily. You're Sterling's son. Your father acquired TriStar and inherited their problems, including your case. I believe you were framed. Thomas laughed bitterly. Finally, someone believes me. 15 years too late. Tell me what happened. Thomas glanced at Sarah, then began. I was TriStar's forensic accountant. In early 2009, I noticed discrepancies in the quarterly reports, money moving through accounts that didn't add up. I traced it back to a series of shell companies. How much? 4.2 million over 3 years. Whoever was doing it was smart. Spread it out, kept the amount small enough to avoid immediate detection. Alexander leaned forward. Did you identify who was responsible? No, the trail went cold at the shell companies. But I documented everything. Built a case file with bank records, transfer dates, routing numbers. Took it to my supervisor. Who was? Robert Hendricks, TriStar's CFO. Thomas's expression darkened. 2 weeks after I reported it, I was arrested. The evidence against me was my own documentation. They claimed I'd built a paper trail to cover my tracks. What happened to your original files? Disappeared. My home computer was seized as evidence, but they said the files had been deleted. My office computer was wiped clean. The only copies that existed showed me as the embezzler. Sarah spoke up. Dad, did you keep any backups? Anything they might not have found? Thomas hesitated. Maybe. I had a safety deposit box. Put copies of some files there before I reported the discrepancies, just in case. Alexander felt adrenaline spike. Where? First National Bank, Buffalo, box 317. But Sarah, even if the files are still there, they're not enough. It's been 15 years. The statute of limitations doesn't apply to ongoing fraud, Alexander cut in. If Gerald's still stealing, and I can prove he framed you, that reopens everything. Thomas looked at Sarah. Gerald Blackwood? You know him? He was on TriStar's board, pushed hard against your father's acquisition, claimed the company was worthless. Thomas's eyes widened. He knew. He knew about the embezzlement because he was part of it. More than part of it, Alexander said grimly. I think he orchestrated it, used his position on the board to hide the theft, then framed you when you got too close. Thomas stood, pacing the small room. If that's true, if I've been in here for 15 years because of him, we're going to prove it, Alexander said. And when we do, you're walking out of here. I give you my word. Thomas looked at him for a long moment. Why do you care? Your father acquired TriStar knowing about this mess. For all I know, he was in on it too. My father was many things, but he wasn't a thief, and Sarah saved my son's life. I owe her more than I can ever repay. This is a start. The drive back to the city was quiet until Sarah finally spoke. Thank you for believing him. I'm sorry it took so long for anyone to. Sarah looked out the window at the landscape blurring past. Lily's been asking about Noah. I've been putting her off, but she knows something's wrong. Alexander gripped the steering wheel. How is she? Sad, trying to hide it, but I can tell. Her grades dropped. She's not sleeping well. Noah's the same, won't eat, barely speaks. His therapist wants to medicate him. For depression? Alexander, he's 3 years old. I know. His voice cracked. I know what I did to him. To both of them. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then carefully, what happens after the shareholder meeting? If everything goes according to plan, Gerald is removed from the board and arrested. I reinstate you fully. The board won't be able to object once the truth comes out. And if it doesn't go according to plan? Alexander did not answer because there was no good answer. If the board sided with Gerald despite the evidence, Alexander would lose more than a corporate fight. He would lose the ability to protect Noah, to make this right with Sarah, to undo any of the damage he had caused. His phone rang. Marcus. Sir, we have a problem. Alexander's blood went cold. What kind of problem? Gerald knows we're investigating him. I don't know how, but he knows. He just moved $8 million offshore. Can we trace it? I'm trying, but sir, if he's running, he might do something desperate first. Alexander thought about Noah alone at the penthouse with only security guards. Double Noah's protection. I want eyes on him 24/7. Already done, but sir, Gerald's not just running. He's planning something. I intercepted an encrypted communication to Eclipse Security Services. Alexander's hands tightened on the wheel. Eclipse was a mercenary group, the kind that asked no questions if the price was right. What did the message say? I couldn't decrypt all of it, but I got fragments. Something about a package, a deadline, and a demonstration. A demonstration of what? I don't know, but Alexander, whatever Gerald's planning, I think it involves Noah. Sarah was watching him, her face pale. She had heard enough of the conversation to understand. We need to get back to the city. Now. Alexander floored the accelerator. They made it back in 2 hours, breaking every speed limit. Marcus met them at Sterling Tower, his expression grim. Noah's fine, he's at school. I have 3 security personnel on site, 2 more in unmarked vehicles outside. Where's Gerald? That's the problem. He's gone dark. No credit card activity, no phone calls, nothing. He either ran or he's preparing his demonstration, Alexander finished. His phone buzzed. Westfield Academy. Alexander answered. This is Sterling. Mr. Sterling, this is Principal Morrison. I'm calling about the field trip approval form. We have Noah listed for the Natural History Museum visit tomorrow, but we don't have your signature on the permission slip. Alexander's mouth went dry. I didn't approve any field trip. A pause. Sir, the form was submitted 3 days ago with your electronic signature. I never signed it. Cancel Noah's participation immediately. Mr. Sterling, the children are already quite excited. If this is about the chaperone situation, we have plenty of... This isn't a request. Noah is not to leave campus under any circumstances. Do you understand? Another pause, this one laden with professional affront. Of course, Mr. Sterling. I'll note it in his file. Alexander hung up and looked at Marcus. The field trip. That's when Gerald was planning to move. It makes sense. Controlled chaos, lots of kids, multiple adults. Easy to snatch one blind child in the confusion. Sarah spoke up. Lily's in Noah's class. She'd be on that trip too. Alexander felt sick. If something happened to Lily because of his war with Gerald, we cancel the trip. I'll call the museum, cite security concerns. Whatever it takes. But Marcus was shaking his head. If we cancel, Gerald knows we're on to him. He'll just try again, somewhere we can't control. At least this way, we know when and where. You want to use my son as bait? I want to catch Gerald in the act. With witnesses, with evidence that can't be disputed. We set the trap, control the environment, and end this. Alexander wanted to refuse, wanted to lock Noah in the penthouse and never let him out. But Marcus was right. Gerald would keep trying. Better to face it now on their terms. What do you need? Full tactical team. I'll coordinate with NYPD. Keep it quiet. We'll have eyes on every exit, every bathroom, every corner of that museum. If Gerald makes a move, we'll have him. And if something goes wrong, Marcus met his eyes. Nothing will go wrong, I give you my word. The next morning, Alexander stood in the Westfield Academy parking lot and watched Noah board the school bus. Every instinct screamed at him to grab his son and run. Instead, he smiled and waved. Have fun, buddy. Noah's face was turned toward him, those clouded eyes that saw nothing but somehow seemed to see everything. You're worried, Daddy. I can hear it in your voice. Alexander knelt down, bringing himself to Noah's level. I'm always worried about you. That's what dads do. Is Lily going to be there? Yes, she'll be on the trip. For the first time in 2 weeks, Noah smiled. Okay, I'll be good. Alexander watched the bus pull away and felt like he was sending his son into battle. Sarah appeared at his elbow. Lily's on board. She knows to stay close to Noah. Did you tell her that there might be danger? No. She's 8, Alexander. I told her to be Noah's eyes today, to not let him out of her sight. She thinks it's a game. Alexander's phone showed a text from Marcus. All units in position. I'm in the museum loading dock. Undercover as maintenance. The next 3 hours were the longest of Alexander's life. He sat in his office, unable to work, phone in hand, waiting for updates that did not come. At 2:15 p.m. his phone rang. Sir, we have a situation. Alexander's heart stopped. What happened? 2 men entered the museum 15 minutes ago. Janitorial uniforms, but they're not on the museum staff. They're heading toward the elementary school group. Where's Noah? Bathroom break. The teacher sent him with a classroom aide. Lily went too. Stop them. Now. Sir, we can't move until they make their play. If we spook them, I don't care about catching Gerald. Get my son out of there. But even as he said it, Alexander heard shouting through the phone, a woman screaming. Then Marcus's voice, sharp and commanding. All units move now. Repeat, all units move. Then the line went dead. Alexander was already running. He made it to the museum in 12 minutes, leaving his driver behind, driving himself through red lights and gridlock with single-minded focus. Police cars were converging, sirens wailing. Tourists scattered in confusion. Marcus met him at the entrance, his expression grim. They got Noah. The world tilted. Alexander grabbed Marcus's jacket, pulling him close. What do you mean they got him? You said you had this under control. They moved faster than we anticipated. Grabbed Noah from the bathroom, chloroformed him before we could intervene. They had a vehicle waiting at the service entrance. Where's Lily? Injured. She tried to stop them. One of the kidnappers shoved her into a wall. She's conscious but has a head wound. Paramedics are with her now. Alexander released Marcus and started toward the museum, but Marcus caught his arm. Sir, there's more. They left a message. He handed Alexander a phone. Not his phone, a burner, the kind used for untraceable calls. It rang. Alexander answered. Mr. Sterling. The voice was distorted, run through a modulator, but Alexander would recognize Gerald's cadence anywhere. By now, you've realized your son is missing. If you hurt him, no, I'm simply demonstrating a point. You've been making accusations, digging into matters that don't concern you. I thought a practical lesson might refocus your attention. What do you want? $10 million. Small change for you. Consider it the price of Noah's safe return. And if I go to the police? Then Noah becomes a statistic. 3-year-old blind child, lost and alone. Such tragic accidents happen. Alexander forced his voice to stay level. Let me speak to him. A pause, then Noah's voice, small and terrified. Daddy? I'm here, buddy. Are you hurt? I'm scared. It's dark. I can't see and it's dark. I know, but I'm going to come get you, I promise. They put something on my face. It made me sleepy. Daddy, I want to go home. You will, very soon. Can you tell me where you are? But the kidnappers had already pulled the phone away. 6 hours, Mr. Sterling. I'll send instructions. Come alone, bring the money, and this all ends quietly. Involve the police, and Alexander interrupted. You're going to prison, Gerald. Whether Noah comes home or not, you're done. A pause, then Gerald's voice, cold and final. We'll see. The line went dead. Alexander looked at Marcus. Tell me you got a trace. Working on it, but sir, there's something else. Something the kidnapper said. Marcus pulled out his phone, playing back the audio. At the very end, Beneath the modulated voice, there was another sound, faint but distinct, a train whistle, then a rhythmic clanging. Railroad crossing, Marcus said. Old-style warning bell. There are only a dozen of those left in the tri-state area. Start checking them, all of them. A commotion behind them. Sarah pushing through the police line, Lily in her arms. The girl had a bandage on her forehead, her face pale but determined. Mr. Sterling, Lily's voice was steady despite her injury. I know where Noah is. Alexander knelt in front of her. Lily, how could you possibly... Before they took him, Noah tapped on my hand. Our secret code. Sarah looked at her daughter. What secret code? Me and Noah. We made up a code, like Morse code, but simpler. He taps letters on my hand when he wants to tell me secrets. Alexander felt hope flare. What did he say? Lily held out her small hand, demonstrating. 3 quick taps. Pause. 4 taps. Pause. 2 taps. F, she said. Then A, then N. She continued through the pattern. F-A-C-T-O-R-Y. Factory, Alexander breathed. Sarah's eyes widened. The Millbrook Candy Factory. I told Lily stories about her father working there. She must have told Noah. Marcus was already on his phone, pulling up maps. Millbrook Factory, abandoned since 2012. Northern edge of the Bronx. There's a freight line that runs past it. Railroad crossing, Alexander said, with an old mechanical warning system. Marcus showed him the satellite image. Decaying buildings, overgrown lots, train tracks cutting through the property. It's perfect. Isolated. Lots of exits. Easy to defend. How long to get there? 30 minutes with traffic, but sir, we need to call SWAT. Coordinate with... No time. Gerald said 6 hours, but he's not planning to honor that. He's going to kill Noah and disappear. We move now. Sarah grabbed his arm. I'm coming with you. Sarah, it's too dangerous. That's my daughter's friend in there. The boy she jumped into mud to save. I'm not sitting here while you play hero. Alexander looked at her, saw the steel beneath the fear, and nodded. Marcus, tactical van, full gear. We leave in 5 minutes. They made the drive in 23 minutes, Marcus behind the wheel while Alexander suited up in body armor that felt simultaneously too heavy and not nearly enough protection. Sarah sat beside him, her face set in determined lines. When we get there, Alexander said, you stay in the van, no arguments. And if you need someone Noah trusts, someone to calm him down if he's panicking? She had a point. Alexander looked at Marcus. She stays at the perimeter. First sign of gunfire, you pull her back. The Millbrook Candy Factory loomed against the afternoon sky like a rotted tooth. Broken windows, collapsed roof sections, graffiti covering every surface. The kind of place parents warn children about. Marcus's team spread out, 3 men in tactical gear, moving with military precision. They had insisted on coming, despite Alexander's protest that this was not official. Apparently loyalty to Marcus trumped regulations. The factory had multiple entry points, all of them compromised by time and vandalism. Marcus chose the loading dock, a rusted metal door that shrieked in protest when they forced it open. Inside was darkness and the smell of decay. Old machinery loomed like sleeping monsters. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. Thermal imaging shows 2 heat signatures. North side basement, Marcus whispered. 1 adult-sized, 1 child. Where's the second kidnapper? Unknown, could be outside in a vehicle, could be... Gunfire erupted from above. Muzzle flashes in the darkness, bullets sparking off metal. Marcus returned fire, his team moving to flank. Alexander hit the ground, covering his head, every instinct screaming to run toward Noah, but training holding him in place. The firefight lasted 30 seconds. Then silence. One of Marcus's team called out, "Clear! 1 hostile down, 1 escaped through west exit." Alexander was moving before Marcus could stop him, racing toward the basement stairs. He took them 2 at a time, his heart hammering. The basement was a concrete hole, empty except for a chair in the center. Noah sat tied to it, a blindfold over his eyes, his small body shaking. "Noah!" Alexander crashed to his knees, ripping at the ropes, pulling off the blindfold. Noah's clouded eyes were wide with terror, tear tracks on his dirty face. "Daddy, is it really you?" "It's me. You're safe. I've got you." Noah collapsed into his father's arms, sobbing. Alexander held him, this small, precious person he had almost lost, and felt something fundamental shift inside him. He had spent 3 years trying to be the CEO his father wanted, trying to run an empire while keeping emotional distance from anything that might make him vulnerable. And in doing so, he had almost lost the only thing that mattered. "I was brave," Noah whispered. "Like Lily said, I left her the code. You were so brave, buddy. So smart. Sarah appeared in the doorway and Noah's head turned toward her voice. Miss Sarah, is Lily okay? She's fine. She's the one who figured out your code. She saved you, Noah. Marcus was on his phone, coordinating with the team hunting the second kidnapper. But Alexander barely heard him. He was focused on Noah, on the miracle of his son alive and safe in his arms. They found the second kidnapper 20 minutes later, trying to hotwire a car 3 blocks away. Marcus's team took him down without incident. In the back of the tactical van, with Noah wrapped in a blanket and Sarah beside them, Alexander finally allowed himself to breathe. His phone rang. Victoria. Tell me Noah's safe. He's safe, shaken but unharmed. And Gerald? 1 kidnapper dead, 1 in custody. We're waiting to see if he talks. He won't have to. Victoria's voice was grim. Turn on the news. Alexander pulled out his phone, navigating to a news site. The headline made his blood run cold. Gerald Blackwood found dead in apparent suicide. The article was brief. Gerald's body discovered in his garage, carbon monoxide poisoning, suicide note confessing to the kidnapping. Alexander looked at Marcus. His head of security's expression was carefully neutral. Marcus, did you? Sir, I've been with you the entire time, as have my team. But someone had gotten to Gerald, someone who wanted to make sure he could not implicate others or cut a deal. Alexander did not ask more questions. Some answers were better left unknown. The drive back to the city was quiet. Noah had fallen asleep in Alexander's arms, exhausted from fear and adrenaline. Sarah sat across from them, watching them with an expression Alexander could not read. What happens now? She asked softly. Now I've finished what I started. The shareholder meeting is tomorrow. With Gerald dead and his crimes exposed, the board will have no choice but to clear your father's name. And us? Alexander met her eyes. I want you to come home. You and Lily, if you'll give me another chance. Sarah looked at Noah, sleeping peacefully despite everything. He needs stability, Alexander, not another upheaval. I know, and I swear to you, no more boardroom politics. No more choosing the company over what matters. Noah comes first. Always. And when the next crisis hits, when the board demands something you don't want to give, then I walk away from the board. From the company, if necessary. I've been building an empire for other people's approval. It's time I build a life for my son. Sarah studied him for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone and typed something. Alexander's phone buzzed. Okay, one more chance. But Alexander, if you break his heart again, mine won't be far behind. He read her message. A simple yes. I won't. I promise. The emergency shareholder meeting convened the next morning in chaos. News of Gerald's death and the kidnapping had broken overnight. The media was in a frenzy. The board members looked shell-shocked. Victoria called the meeting to order with an iron hand. Before we address Gerald's crimes, we have another matter to settle. Thomas Chen's wrongful conviction. She laid out the evidence. The files from the safety deposit box recovered overnight by Marcus's team. The shell companies traced back to Gerald. The fabricated evidence. The 16 years an innocent man had spent in prison. The board members listened in stunned silence. We will be issuing a formal statement clearing Thomas Chen's name, Victoria continued. Sterling Enterprises will fund his legal appeal and provide full compensation for his lost years. We will also establish an oversight committee to ensure nothing like this ever happens again. Seconded, said one of the older board members. The motion passed unanimously. Then the doors opened and Sarah entered, Lily at her side. The room went silent. Victoria smiled. Ms. Chen, thank you for joining us. I believe you have a presentation. Sarah approached the podium with Lily, and Alexander saw his fierce, brave Sarah pushing past fear to stand before the people who had tried to destroy her. My daughter has invented something, Sarah said simply. Something that could help thousands of children like Noah. Lily stepped forward, holding a crude but functional headband covered in sensors and wires. It's called SoundSight, Lily explained in her small, clear voice. It helps blind people see with sounds, like bats do. She placed the device on the table and activated it. A soft clicking filled the room, too high-pitched for most to hear clearly. But the vibration pads on the temples glowed with different intensities, translating echoes into tactile feedback. Noah tested it for me, Lily continued. He said it helps him feel where walls are, where doorways are. He can tell the difference between big spaces and small ones just from the vibrations. Alexander watched the board members lean forward, interest replacing skepticism. Victoria spoke up. I propose we establish a new division, Sterling Assistive Technologies. Sarah Chen as president, Lily Chen retaining 51% ownership of all her inventions and patents. Seconded, Alexander said. The vote was swift, unanimous approval. Diana Pierce, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. I owe you an apology, Miss Chen. I made assumptions based on prejudice and fear. I'm sorry. Sarah nodded, accepting the apology with grace Alexander knew cost her. After the meeting, Alexander found Sarah and Lily in the hallway. Noah had joined them using the SoundSight prototype, his face alight with wonder. I can feel you smiling, Daddy. The device shows me. Alexander knelt beside his son. What do you think? Should we let Lily and her mom come back home? Noah's answer was to throw his arms around Lily. Please say yes, please. Lily looked at her mother. Sarah looked at Alexander. One more chance, she said. That's all I need, Alexander replied. That evening, Marcus found Alexander in his office, staring at the photo of Elena. Sir, there's something you should know about Gerald's death. Alexander looked up. Do I want to know? Probably not, but I thought you should hear it from me. Marcus sat down. Gerald didn't kill himself. Someone made it look that way. Who? Unknown. Professional work, though. Someone with resources and motivation to keep Gerald from talking. Another board member? Possible. Or someone Gerald was working with. The kidnapping operation was well funded. Gerald was stealing from the company, but not enough to bankroll mercenaries and offshore accounts. Alexander felt a chill. So there's someone else. Someone still out there. Yes, sir, which means this isn't over. Gerald was a symptom, not the disease. Alexander looked at the photo of his wife. Elena had always known when he was lying to himself, would have called him on the self-deception that had nearly cost him Noah. Then we find them, Alexander said, but not by sacrificing Noah again, not by pushing away the people who matter. Agreed, sir. Marcus stood. For what it's worth, you made the right choice today. Your father would have chosen the company. You chose your son. After Marcus left, Alexander sat alone with his thoughts. The photo of Elena seemed to smile at him, approving. He pulled out his phone and texted Sarah. Thank you for giving us another chance. I won't waste it. Her response came quickly. See that you don't. Lily's already planning which bedroom will be hers. Alexander smiled, then he closed his laptop, left his office while it was still light out, and went home to his son. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There was still a shadow conspiracy to uncover, a company to rebuild, a father to exonerate from prison. But tonight, Alexander Sterling was just a father. And that, he was finally learning, was enough. The fallout from Gerald's death and Noah's kidnapping hit the financial news like a tsunami. Sterling Enterprises stock dropped 12% in the first hour of trading. Investors panicked. Competitors circled like sharks. The media wanted blood, wanted answers, wanted someone to blame. Alexander gave them Gerald. The press conference was brutal. Questions shouted from every direction, cameras flashing like strobe lights. But Alexander stood at the podium, shoulders straight, and told the truth. Gerald Blackwood had embezzled from Sterling Enterprises, had framed an innocent man 16 years ago, had orchestrated the kidnapping of a 3-year-old child to cover his crimes. The evidence was overwhelming. The board had no choice but to acknowledge it publicly. What Alexander did not mention was the suicide that was not a suicide. Some truths were too dangerous to speak aloud. Diana Pierce sat in the audience, her face pale. After the conference, she approached Alexander in the hallway outside the media room. I need to speak with you. Privately. They found an empty conference room. Diana closed the door and stood for a moment, composing herself. I visited Thomas Chen in prison multiple times over the past 6 months. Alexander already knew this from Marcus's investigation, but he let her continue. My son died 12 years ago, acute lymphoblastic leukemia. He was 8 years old. Diana's voice was steady, but her hands shook. The insurance company denied coverage for the experimental treatment his doctors recommended, said it was not medically necessary. 3 months later, he was gone. I'm sorry, Alexander said and meant it. The insurance company was owned by TriStar Industries. The executives who made that decision, they work for you now, for Sterling Enterprises. Alexander felt something cold settle in his chest. You've been planning to destroy us since the acquisition. Yes, Diana met his eyes without flinching. I wanted to expose every corrupt decision your father's company had made. Wanted the world to see that Sterling money was built on the backs of people like my son, like Thomas Chen. So you visited Thomas for ammunition. I visited him because I wanted his evidence, the files proving TriStar executives committed securities fraud. She paused. But then I talked to him, really talked, and I realized he wasn't bitter, wasn't consumed by revenge despite losing 16 years. He just wanted his daughter to know the truth. Diana sat down heavily. I have a choice to Mog Alexander. I can release Thomas's evidence and destroy Sterling Enterprises. Tank the stock, trigger investigations, ruin thousands of innocent employees. Or I can give you the chance to do it yourself, to come clean before I force your hand. Alexander studied her. This was a test, a final judgment on whether he was his father's son or something different. Release it, he said. Diana blinked. What? You're right. Those executives are criminals. The insurance decisions that killed your son were made by people who now collect Sterling paychecks. If I bury that to protect the company, I'm no better than Gerald. You'll destroy Sterling Enterprises. Maybe, or maybe we survive by telling the truth. Alexander pulled out his phone. I'm calling an emergency press conference. 30 minutes. I'm going to announce a full internal investigation, cooperation with federal authorities, and a victims' compensation fund, including your family. I don't want your money, Alexander. Money won't bring my son back. No, but it might save someone else's son. That's what your boy would have wanted, isn't it? For his death to mean something? Diana's composure cracked. She pressed her hands to her face, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Sarah appeared in the doorway. She must have been looking for Alexander, but she stopped when she saw Diana crying. I'm sorry, Sarah said quietly. I'll come back. No, Diana looked up, tears streaking her makeup. Stay, please. I owe you an apology too. Sarah entered cautiously and sat across from Diana. I tried to destroy you, Diana said. Used your father's conviction to paint you as a threat. I was so consumed by my own pain that I couldn't see yours. You lost your son, Sarah replied. I can't imagine that pain. And you lost 16 years with your father because of lies. We're both victims of the same corrupt system. I should have seen that sooner. The two women looked at each other, and Alexander saw something pass between them. Not friendship, not yet, but understanding, the recognition of shared suffering. What will you do now? Sarah asked. Diana wiped her eyes, makeup smearing. I don't know. I've spent 12 years planning revenge. I don't know who I am without that anger. You could help us, Alexander said. Both women turned to look at him. Sterling Assistive Technologies needs board oversight. Someone who understands what it's like to fight insurance companies and medical bureaucracy. Someone who won't let us become what TriStar was. Diana laughed, bitter and surprised. You want me on your board after I tried to destroy you? I want someone who will keep us honest. Someone who cares more about doing right than protecting profits. Alexander leaned forward. Transform your anger into something that helps people. Make your son's death count for something. Diana looked at Sarah, who nodded slightly. I'll think about it, Diana said finally. The second press conference was worse than the first. Alexander stood before the cameras and eviscerated his own company. He named the executives involved in the insurance fraud, announced their immediate termination and pending criminal charges, detailed the securities violations that had sent Thomas Chen to prison, pledged full cooperation with federal investigators. The stock dropped another 8%. Alexander did not care. That evening, he found Sarah in the penthouse kitchen making dinner. Noah and Lily were in the living room, Noah using the sound site while Lily guided him through building an elaborate block tower. You destroyed billions of dollars in shareholder value today, Sarah said without looking up from the vegetables she was chopping. I know. The board must be livid. 3 members resigned, 2 are threatening lawsuits. Sarah finally looked at him. Do you regret it? Alexander thought about his father, who had built Sterling Enterprises through ruthless acquisition and moral compromise, who had died wealthy and powerful and alone, alienated from his own family by the empire he could not stop building. No, Alexander said, I don't regret it at all. Sarah smiled. Good, because Noah heard you on the news. He told Lily his daddy was a superhero. Alexander felt his throat tighten. He moved to the living room doorway and watched his son, this small, blind boy who saw him more clearly than anyone. Daddy! Noah's face turned toward him. Come see what Lily and I built. Alexander joined them on the floor, his suit pants wrinkling on the carpet, and for the first time in years felt like he was exactly where he belonged. 6 months passed. Sterling Enterprises survived, though not without scars. The federal investigation led to 17 arrests across 3 states. The Victims' Compensation Fund distributed $43 million. Diana Pierce officially joined the Sterling Assistive Technologies Board and proved to be its fiercest advocate. Soundsight moved into clinical trials at 3 major hospitals. The results were stunning. Children with visual impairments could navigate unfamiliar spaces with confidence. Adults who had given up on independence found new freedom. Media coverage exploded. Lily Chen, now 9 years old, became the face of assistive technology innovation. Forbes called her the youngest inventor to potentially reach unicorn valuation. TED invited her to speak. Alexander watched it all with pride and concern. Lily was still just a child. The pressure could crush her if they were not careful. But Sarah managed it with the same fierce protectiveness she had always shown. Limited media access. No interviews without both parents present. School came first, always. Noah thrived alongside Lily's success. His hearing deterioration had slowed. The doctors could not explain why. Perhaps reduced stress. Perhaps the sound sight giving him new ways to navigate the world. Perhaps simply being happy. Alexander no longer cared about the why, only the fact that his son laughed every day. The Sterling Foundation charity get-demo gala was scheduled for late spring, 6 months to the day after Noah's rescue. 400 guests, Metropolitan Museum, black tie mandatory. Sarah stood in her bedroom, staring at the gown Victoria had insisted on buying. Midnight blue, elegant, probably cost more than her first car. "I don't belong at these things," she said to her reflection. Lily appeared in the doorway, already dressed in her own gown, paired incongruously with light-up sneakers. "Mom, you look beautiful." "I look like I'm playing dress-up." "No," came Victoria's voice from behind Lily. "You look like exactly what you are. The president of a revolutionary company and the woman who saved my grandson." Victoria entered, resplendent in vintage Chanel. She circled Sarah, adjusting a fold here, a strap there. "Hold your head up, dear. You've earned your place in that room. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." At the museum, Alexander greeted guests with the practiced ease of someone born to wealth. But his eyes kept finding Sarah across the room, watching her navigate conversations with board members and investors. She was magnificent, poised, intelligent, refusing to be cowed by old money and older prejudices. Noah appeared at Alexander's elbow, dressed in a miniature tuxedo, using his sound sight to navigate the crowd. "Daddy, is it time yet?" "Time for what, buddy?" Noah grinned, mischievous in a way that made Alexander nervous. "You'll see. Lily and I have a plan." Before Alexander could question further, the master of ceremonies called for attention. The speeches were about to begin. Alexander gave his prepared remarks about the foundation's work, the partnerships they had built, the lives they had changed. The audience applauded politely. Then Noah stepped up to the microphone. Alexander had not known this was planned. From Sarah's shocked expression across the room, neither had she. "Excuse me," Noah said, his small voice amplified through the sound system. "I have something to say." The room went silent. A blind 5-year-old at a microphone commanded attention in a way no CEO ever could. "My name is Noah Sterling. I can't see, but I can hear everything. I know when people are sad, even when they pretend to smile. I know when they're scared, even when they act brave." Noah paused, his face turned toward where Alexander stood. "My daddy has been scared for a long time. Since my mommy died, he was scared he couldn't take care of me by himself. Scared he would mess up. Scared to love people because love hurts when you lose them." Alexander felt every eye in the room turn toward him. He could not move, could not breathe. "But then Lily jumped into the mud to save me. And her mom Sarah taught Daddy that being scared is okay. That messing up is okay. That love is worth the hurt." Noah gestured and Lily appeared beside him, prompting him with whispers. "So me and Lily think Daddy should marry Sarah. Then we can be a real family. Not just people living in the same building. A real family." The audience laughed, charmed by the child's earnestness. "And since Daddy is really slow about these things, we think you should all help convince him. So everybody, should Daddy marry Sarah?" The response was immediate and overwhelming. Applause, cheers, calls of encouragement. Alexander looked at Sarah. She stood frozen, face burning with embarrassment and something else. Hope, maybe. He made a decision. Alexander walked to the stage. The crowd parted for him. He climbed the steps and knelt beside Noah. "Buddy, you can't just announce things like this in front of 400 people. "Why not? You love her, Daddy. I can hear it in your voice when you talk about her." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" Alexander looked at Sarah. She was watching him with those dark eyes that saw through every defense he had ever built. The point was he had spent 2 years being careful, being cautious, keeping emotional distance to protect himself from more loss. And it had nearly cost him everything. "You're right," Alexander said. "I am too slow." He stood and addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for my son's unscheduled announcement. However, he's not wrong. Alexander pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. He had been carrying it for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment. Apparently, his 5-year-old had better timing than he did. Sarah Chen, would you please join me on stage? Sarah moved through the crowd in a daze. When she reached the stage, Alexander took her hand. I had a whole speech plan, he said quietly, just for her. Victoria helped me write it. Very romantic, very proper. But I'm going to ignore it because Noah's right. I've been too slow, too scared, too worried about doing this perfectly. He knelt there in front of 400 witnesses and opened the box. Shra, you jumped into the mud to save my son when you had every reason to walk away. You gave us both a second chance at life. I'm asking you to give me a third chance. Marry me. Not because Noah orchestrated this, not because it makes a good story, but because I love you and I can't imagine my life without you. Sarah was crying, so was half the room. That was a terrible proposal, she said, voice shaking. I know. You ambushed me in front of hundreds of people. I know. And you let a 5-year-old play matchmaker. He has good instincts. Sarah laughed through her tears. Yes. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you, even though you're terrible at this. Alexander slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her while the crowd erupted into applause. Noah and Lily jumped up and down, hugging each other. In the back of the room, Victoria raised her champagne glass in salute. Diana Pierce, standing beside her, smiled for the first time in 12 years. The wedding was planned for 6 months later, giving Thomas Chen time to be released from prison. The appeals process moved with surprising speed once Sterling Enterprises threw its legal weight behind it. The original evidence was examined, Gerald's fraud exposed, the frame job undeniable. 16 years after his wrongful conviction, Thomas Chen walked out of Attica a free man. Alexander and Sarah were waiting. So was Lily, who barely remembered her grandfather but ran to him anyway, trusting her mother's tears of joy. Thomas looked older than his 62 years. Prison had carved lines into his face, stooped his shoulders. But when he held his daughter and granddaughter, something in him straightened. Thank you, he said to Alexander over Sarah's head, for believing me when no one else did. Thank you for raising a daughter brave enough to save my son. Thomas was offered a position at Sterling Assistive Technologies, consultant on ethics and compliance, ensuring the company never lost sight of its mission. He accepted. The next 6 months were a blur of wedding planning, product launches, and family dinners that felt like learning to breathe again after years of holding your breath. Alexander stepped down as CEO of Sterling Enterprises, appointed a successor from outside the family, someone with no connection to his father's empire. He kept his seat on the board but focused his energy on Sterling Assistive Technologies. The company did not need him to run it. His son did. The wedding took place in Central Park on a crisp October afternoon, 1 year after Lily had pulled Noah from the mud. They chose a spot near the old construction pit, now filled and covered with grass. A plaque had been installed, small and tasteful, reading, "Sometimes life's greatest blessings come from jumping in the mud." 50 guests sat in chairs arranged in a semicircle. No media, no cameras beyond a single photographer. Just family and the few friends they trusted. Noah and Lily stood at the front, officially deputized by the state of New York to perform the ceremony. They had practiced for weeks, Lily reading the words aloud while Noah memorized them by sound. The processional music started. Sarah appeared in a simple white dress, walking alone. She had thought about asking Thomas to give her away but decided against it. She was not being given, she was choosing. Alexander waited at the altar, his eyes never leaving her face. When Sarah reached him, Noah cleared his throat importantly. "We are here today because my daddy and Miss Sarah love each other. Also because me and Lily want to be brother and sister for real." Gentle laughter from the guests. Lily took over. "Do you, Alexander Sterling, promise to love Sarah even when she's grumpy in the morning before coffee?" "I do," Alexander said solemnly. "And do you promise to never send her away again no matter what the board says?" Alexander's voice caught. "I do." Noah's turn. "Do you, Sarah Chen, promise to love my daddy even when he works too much and forgets to eat lunch?" "I do." "And do you promise to make sure he plays with me instead of just paying other people to?" Sarah smiled. "I absolutely do." Lily produced the rings with a flourish. Simple bands, no diamonds. They had agreed on understated. "Then by the power given to us by the state of New York, and also because we planned this whole thing," Lily announced, "we say you're married now. You can kiss and stuff." Alexander kissed his wife, while their children cheered and their small gathering of loved ones applauded. At the reception, held in a restaurant overlooking the park, Thomas Chen raised his glass to second chances. and to the people brave enough to take them. Diana Pierce stood, surprising everyone. To families we choose. Sometimes they're worth more than the ones we're born into. Victoria, elegant as always, finished the toasts. To my son, who finally learned what his father never did. That love is stronger than legacy. That being present is worth more than being powerful. And to Sarah and Lily, who taught him what I could not. As the sun set over the city, Alexander watched Noah and Lily playing together. Two children, bound not by blood, but by something stronger. He felt Sarah's hand slip into his. Happy? She asked. Terrified, he admitted. But yes, happy. What are you terrified of? Losing this, messing it up, reverting to the person I was before. Sarah squeezed his hand. Then I'll just have to keep reminding you. That's what wives are for. 1 year later, Alexander stood in the offices of Sterling Assistive Technologies and reviewed the quarterly report. Soundsight was now distributed in 47 countries. 12,000 units sold. Revenue approaching $200 million. Lily's 51% ownership made her, on paper, wealthier than most adults would ever be. But she was still just a 10-year-old who preferred light-up sneakers to designer shoes and spent her Saturdays reading to Noah in their shared playroom. Noah had started piano lessons. His hearing degradation had mysteriously reversed, the doctor still baffled. He played simple songs by ear, his small fingers finding keys with the same precision he used to navigate the world. Sarah ran Sterling Assistive Technologies with efficiency that would have made Alexander's father proud and compassion that would have baffled him. She had expanded beyond Soundsight into other assistive devices, each one developed with input from the people who would actually use them. Thomas Chen had become the company's conscience, the person who asked the hard questions about profit versus purpose. Diana Pierce served as the skeptical board member who kept them honest, who remembered what happened when companies prioritized shareholders over people. It was not perfect. There were still hard days, still moments when Alexander felt the pull of his old life, the addiction to power and control. But then he would come home to find Noah and Lily building pillow forts in the living room, would have dinner with Sarah and Thomas, and talk about things that mattered more than stock prices. Would tuck his son into bed and hear, "I love you, Daddy," instead of silence. And he would remember why he had chosen this. Marcus found Alexander in his office late one afternoon. His head of security looked troubled. "Sir, there's something you should know." Alexander looked up from the product development proposal he was reviewing. "The investigation into who killed Gerald. We've been running it quietly, following money trails. And we found something, a pattern of payments from offshore accounts. Someone was funding Gerald's embezzlement, using him as a front." Alexander felt old familiar dread. "Who?" "We don't know yet. The accounts are buried under so many shells we may never trace them. But sir, whoever they are, they're still out there, still operating. And now that Gerald's gone, they might need a new frontman. Or they might cut their losses and disappear." "Possibly. But sir, Eclipse Security Services, the mercenaries Gerald hired, they received another payment 3 weeks ago. Same account structure, same amount." Alexander stood slowly. "You think someone else is planning something? I think we should be cautious. Increase security protocols. Monitor communications. Whatever Gerald was part of, it didn't end with his death." Alexander thought about Sarah and Lily, about Noah finally feeling safe, about the life they had built from mud and determination. "Do it quietly. I don't want to frighten the family. But Marcus, if anyone comes for them again, they'll have to go through me first, sir. You have my word." After Marcus left, Alexander sat alone with the knowledge that threats still lurked in shadows, that choosing family over empire had not made him safe, that there would always be another Gerald, another conspiracy, another choice between what was easy and what was right. But he also knew he would make the same choice every time. That evening, Alexander came home to controlled chaos. Noah and Lily had attempted to bake cookies without adult supervision. The kitchen looked like a flower bomb had detonated. Sarah stood in the doorway, trying not to laugh. "They wanted to surprise you," she explained. Alexander looked at his son, covered in chocolate chips and grinning. At Lily, wearing more flour than was probably in the recipe. At Sarah, his wife, shaking her head in amused exasperation. "Mission accomplished," he said. He joined them in the kitchen, his suit pants collecting flour dust, his tie getting smeared with chocolate. Together, they salvaged the cookies into something almost edible. Later, after the children were asleep and the kitchen was clean, Alexander and Sarah sat on the balcony overlooking Central Park. "Marcus told you about the new threat," Sarah said. It was not a question. "How did you know?" You get this look, like you're bracing for impact. She took his hand. Whatever's coming, we'll handle it. You sound certain. I am. We survived Gerald, survived the board, survived our own fear and stupidity. Whatever comes next, we're stronger for it. Alexander pulled her close. In the distance, the city glittered with promise and threat in equal measure. Somewhere out there, unknown enemies made plans. Unknown dangers waited. But here, now, with his wife in his arms and his son safe in bed, Alexander Sterling had everything that mattered. The phone on the table buzzed. A message from Victoria. Board meeting next week. Minor matters only. Sleep well, dear. Alexander smiled and set the phone aside. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would always be another crisis, another choice, another test of whether he had truly changed or only paused. But tonight he was just a father, a husband, a man who had learned, finally, that the empire worth building was not made of steel and glass and stock certificates. It was made of laughter in the kitchen and small hands reaching for his, of mud-stained sneakers and courage that knew no price, of second chances taken and third chances earned. It was made of love, and that, Alexander had finally learned, was the only legacy worth leaving. In the playroom, Noah stirred in his sleep and smiled. Beside him, Lily dreamed of her next invention. In the guest room, Thomas Chen slept peacefully for the first time in 16 years. And in the master bedroom, Alexander held his wife and knew that whatever shadows waited beyond his walls, whatever threats still lurked in corporate boardrooms and offshore accounts, he had already won the only battle that truly mattered. He had chosen family, and family, forged in mud and desperation and stubborn hope, would always be stronger than empire. The end was just another beginning, and this time Alexander Sterling was ready.